Okay, the evaluate and verify section is where you need to go and look at your real estate data that we gave you in class. So look closely at the real estate prices. What type of data is it, and what do you notice about the data? Okay, so when you look closely at the data, hopefully you realise it is number data. Maybe you could give that a better word. What you should notice about the data is that there's 10 houses and their prices, and one of them is significantly different than the other 9. So you could tell me what that's called. It does say to choose a measure of central tendency and explain why you chose it. Okay, so there's, I guess, a range of students in the classroom. So this one's a bit more of a thinking one. So if choose a measure of central tendency, if you don't know which one to choose, you're going to have to calculate all of them: mean, median and mode. If you have sort of cottoned on in class and you've heard or learnt or seen that there's one measure of central tendency that is the most impacted on when there is a significantly different number. Okay, so this is your significant difference. This is your significant factor. What's that better known as? And it starts with O. But some people have worked out that a number that's far bigger or far smaller than the rest of the data impacts one of the measures of central tendency more than the other 2. So if you know which one it is, you can sort of work through this. Choose a measure of central tendency to calculate and tell me why you chose that one. If you don't know, you're just going to have to, like I said, do all 3. So this isn't your real estate data, it's just something I found on the internet. So this is what I suggest, and I've been doing this on the board. Find the mean, median and mode twice, one without the outlier and one with the outlier. Okay, so this is not the real estate data. It's different data, but the table is maybe what you could set up. You can see that for this pretend data, the outlier decreased the mean by a lot. So this must have been an outlier that was much smaller than the data if it's decreasing the average. Okay, the outlier decreased the median by only 0.5 and there was no change to the mode. So that's the process you should and could go through with the real estate data. Okay, set up a table on a scrap piece of paper with a calculator or using Microsoft Excel. Find the mean, the median and the mode without the data, without the outlier and with the outlier to actually see the impact that the outlier has. So you can see here which average is impacted the most by the outlier. That's the purpose of, and here's some little clues over here. Okay, the mean has a significant change, the median has a little change, the mode has no change. Don't worry about the range. Okay, mean had a massive change, median little change, mode no change. And that's the point of this question, is to analyse the impact that the outlier has in this situation of 10 houses. Okay, so that's the big part of this. Explain. These two kind of go together. Explain the impact that the significant factor has. The significant factor is the very expensive house. The significant factor is the very expensive house, which you know has another word that starts with O. Okay, when analysing the data, it is evident that, which central tendency is mainly affected. Okay, this one here, I guess, is your conclusion, really. Okay. Okay, so if you think about when you do a science report, at the start of your science report, you make a hypothesis or a prediction. And then at the end of your science report, you have to state whether that hypothesis or prediction was proven correct or incorrect. It's the same here. So the point of the conclusion and this last bullet point, do these findings prove similar to the statements you made in the formulate stage of this report? Discuss. So think about some of the statements you made in your formulate stage. What did you have to talk about in the formulate stage? You had to talk about the fact that different datas suited different types of measures of central tendency. So you could say, yes, throughout my report, your conclusion could be, throughout my report, I proved that numerical data better suits mean and median because I explored the fact that modes sometimes unreliable for numerical data. Okay, so in the formulate stage, it was stated that numerical data is better suited to mean and median. Throughout this report, this was proven because the mode was unreliable, or I had no mode, or I had lots of modes. Or you could say that in this report, this was proven correct. Although my data had a reliable mode, my friends didn't. And you could go back to that fact that you actually asked other people. Okay, other statements you might refer back to is, back in the formulate stage, we had to say measures of central tendency were impacted by outliers. Okay, you stated that in your introduction or in your formulate stage, the fact that outliers are those numbers that are significantly bigger or smaller than the rest of the data, and that they impact the measure of central tendency. That was the other big statement we made in our formulate stage. So you could maybe say here a sentence like this. In the formulate stage, it was stated that outliers affect measures of central tendency. This was proven in the report, where the almost $1.5 million house had a big impact on a particular measure of central tendency. Okay, so there's maybe two discussions or two sentences you can have as a conclusion. It's about going back to the big statements you made at the start of the report about the fact that different data types suit mean, median, and mode differently, and that outliers have a big impact on your data and your averages. And then here is when you summarize and bring together those ideas by referring to what you actually did in your report. In your report, you actually calculated the mean and median and mode, and you found some interesting outcomes there. And in your report, you looked closely at some real estate data to find that the outlier does indeed impact one measure of central tendency the most.